Welcome, Bronco Nation, to my review of the Boise State versus UCF game. Obviously, a tough loss. Boise State lost in this one 31-36. It's actually funny looking at the score. I predicted Boise State winning here 38-34. And if Boise State had been able to score on that second to last, or even that last touchdown drive, or that last drive attempt that they had, it would actually have been almost exactly the score that I predicted. It would have been 38-36. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the offense, the defense, special teams. We're going to assign grades to each of those units and discuss what happened and what needs to be fixed going forward. And we're also going to break down my 3 keys to the game and talk about how Boise State did perform, at least fulfilling those 3 keys that I gave them there. We're not going to go as in-depth as I usually would. I already produced an extensive reaction video, which was my reaction as I was driving back from the UCF game, about 20 minutes long. Already went into a lot of things that I would usually cover in this video. So I'm going to save my breath on that bit. You can hear my voice is still coming back. That's why this video is so late coming out, because I just really got my voice back today. Loud environment. Needed a lot of Boise State fans there yelling, which there were, and I was one of those fans yelling at the top of my voice, which ended up cutting out. So voice is just coming back. I'm not going to go as much in depth as I usually would, but I am still going to hit the key points on each of these, talk about some top players, and also talk about performances that need to be improved going forward. But first off, beginning my video here, UCF fans have been asking me on Twitter, on comments on my videos, they've been asking me to just kind of give my impression of UCF, of their campus, of the game day environment, the experience at the bounce house, just to kind of talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to spend the first couple minutes here just talking about that experience and sharing my thoughts on the game day environment there. So first off, beautiful campus at UCF. I walked about 13 miles around the entire campus, going up and down, back and forth, trying to hit every nook and cranny of it. It is beautiful. I love the tailgating area with the Veterans Memorial. I'm blanking on I think it's called Memorial Lane. But whatever it is, it's in a beautiful, beautiful spot. I love how the whole thing kind of radiates out of that natural area outside the student union, not a swamp, but that little natural area, natural woods right there. It is a well-planned campus with a beautiful layout. I took tons of photos. It was a great time walking around. I really, really enjoyed it pre-gaming at UCF. The environment, as far as the energy, was awesome. In the pre-game, everyone tailgating on that tailgating patch there, walked around. So tons of people. It was awesome, a great environment. Everybody really kind of taking advantage after we've had so many years, or at least so it seems like so many years. Really hasn't been that long, but after so much time with COVID and everything, everybody taking a good opportunity to go out and get together for a football game. Was awesome environment to be in. And then the bounce house itself, even though the rain delay pushed, or the lightning delay pushed the game back a couple hours, and a lot of fans ended up probably not being there that would have been. I would say the stadium was about 2/3 what it usually would have been, at least looking, kind of seeing what seats were empty and what were filled. It was still a loud environment. There were still more fans there than would usually probably been at any other program if the game had been pushed back that long. It was great to see such a passionate fan base, especially the student section as far as their passion. The student section was packed despite the delay, and that stadium, even though it wasn't packed to capacity, was still loud. It was still a hostile, challenging environment for Boise State, and the UCF fans have a ton of credit there in being able to create that environment despite the weather conditions. So, and as far as our reception, the Boise State fan and team reception among the, I won't call them older generation, but adult generation, about 25 years and up, it was fantastic. Lots of mutual respect both ways. Some playful, fun back and forth, jabbering, chirping here and there, but nothing disrespectful. Not a lot of curse words thrown around there. Just good-natured jabbing back and forth. Talking about, Boise, is that even a state? The typical stuff we hear as Boise State fans. But it, others, it was great. It was great. Got to sit down with a couple of fans with a beer, just talk about the game itself and talk about these teams and where they've come from and where they're going. It was an awesome environment at that age level. Now, that's the positives out of the way. I got to get to the negative here. The student body is one of the most toxic student fan bases that I have ever experienced. They were horrible in their treatment of the visiting fans and of the visiting team. Just complete lack of respect. I don't know if that's how UCF is at every game. I don't know. I mean, I know Boise State and UCF have kind of developed a little bit of a rivalry. Even though this is the first time they've played, it just felt like a rivalry game. But these two programs have been battling so long for that top group of 5 team position, and there's a lot of friction between the American Athletic Conference and the Mountain West. So I don't know if that's what was feeding into it, or if that's just how they are overall. But there was just constant negativity from the UCF fans. Curse words hurled here and there. Luckily, nothing physical, just verbal, but curse words left and right, middle fingers, F Boise, Boise sucks. In fact, that was the student section's #1 chant during the game. Anytime that UCF was able to do everything, if they were able to score, if they were able to get a stop, if they were able to get a big rush or a big pass, that was the chant that they went to. Was I believe it was F Boise, clap clap, Boise sucks, or something like that, or maybe it was just F Boise, Boise sucks. But they actually said the word. They just didn't say F. I don't curse, so I'm not going to say it, but they would say F Boise and all that. It was a very, very disappointing, I think, for what UCF is. UCF isn't that little team. Not that they ever really were. They have a huge school, but UCF isn't a little school that should be getting all negative in on a good team like Boise State coming in to face them and acting out like a petulant child. UCF's not a petulant child. UCF is one of the top programs in the Group of 5, if not the top program in the Group of 5. They knocked off Boise State, who has for a long time been the flag bearer among the Group of 5, and UCF was able to beat them. So UCF is a program that has established themselves over the last few years as a top program in the Group of 5. They've been the one that's consistently going out and getting those big bowl games, even over Boise State. And now it looks like they're going to be getting an invite to go join the Big 12. So they're moving out. They're going up to the big boy leagues, and UCF student body, it's time to start acting like it. I don't know when the switch happened, because all the older fans that I talked to were very respectful. I don't know when this kind of new mindset crept in, but it's time to get rid of that, because you're going into a big league, and you're going to be that small school in a big pond again, that small fish in a big pond, and acting out or acting the way that you did at that game is not going to earn you the respect that you need at this next level to be able to get to be able to compete for recruits at the Power 5 level that you're going to be having to recruit against in the Big 12. You'll be recruiting better than you would in the Group of 5, but to be able to go out there and create that environment that even has players coming and playing you and thinking, hey, this might be a school I want to transfer to. I mean, before I actually interacted with a student body at the game, I was thinking, hey, this is a school I'm going to recommend to people that they go to. Not anymore. That student, I wouldn't want anybody that I know interacting with that student body. It was toxic, it was immature, and it was entirely negative. I don't think I heard a single positive thing out of a student's mouth the entire time that I was there. It was wash your mouth out with soap kind of experience. So as far as the game day experience, awesome. As far as the old generation, awesome. As far as the campus itself, awesome. As far as the game, watching the game, and as far as the noise in the stadium, awesome. Student body, incredibly toxic. That is going to be the #1 thing UCF needs to fix moving forward. So I'm already 8 minutes in, but I did want to spend some time talking about my experience at UCF, because that's #1 thing that people have been asking me about. I just wanted to hit that. So we're going to get into this video, and we're just going to talk right here. We're going to break down offense, defense, and special teams, and talk about how it went with Boise State here. So offense, first of all, a lot of players out before we even began the game. Holani out. He was a last second call. Ended up not playing. He dressed. He was there. I saw him going through the warm-ups, but it looked like he was still dealing with a hamstring issue. He's our #1 running back, and that hurt Boise State. Shakir. A lot of fans were asking, why is Shakir not getting the ball? He had 91 yards when he touched the ball. I think it was 4 or 5 times. I think it was 5 times. 2 times in the first half and 3 times in the second half. And every time he touched the ball, he was electric. I mean, he scored 2 touchdowns on 2 of those touches, and he was breaking tackles left and right. And we were just asking, why isn't he getting the ball every single play? Because he's really the most explosive weapon that Boise State has. Well, it turns out that Shakir was dealing with some injury, some form of injury. I don't remember if the coaches said what it was. I don't think they did. But he was dealing with an injury, and he was limited. They had a play count on that they had for him. They knew they wouldn't be able to use him very much, so they used him sparingly in the first half, and they used him in the last quarter, really, when the game was on the line, to try and get Boise State back into this. That makes sense It's disappointing that it had to happen, but one of my talking points was going to be, why didn't we use Shakir? Well, that answered it, and so that's unfortunate that he was out. So I think that if he had been 100%, this game would have turned out potentially very differently. I'm not saying that UCF fans, I'm not making excuses. I'm not saying that Boise State lost this game because we had these two players out. UCF really was shooting themselves in the foot. They had so many drives shut down on themselves because of bad decisions with the interceptions. At least the first pick was a terrible throw that should have been a touchdown if Gabriel just floated it a little bit more, that would have been a touchdown. And then UCF had at least 3 drives, or at least 3 possessions going forward that were killed with holding penalties. Otherwise, they probably would have ended up scoring on those, and they were building up momentum. It's pretty much the only time Boise State was able to stop UCF was when they were to pick them, or when UCF shot themselves in the foot with a holding penalty. So UCF really, if they'd been playing this game as they should have, if they definitely looked like a team adjusting to a new head coach and trying to get themselves in order in that first game of the season. But really, UCF should have won this game by a lot more points than they did. I'm going to talk about that later when I get to the defense. So don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying Boise State would definitely have won with Helani, Shakir, and Sears, Helani and Shakir in, but it would have potentially been a different setup here, and it turned out differently for Boise State. So Sears also looked like he was out in this one, question mark. I haven't had firm confirmation on that, but of course, that's one of the reasons that Bachmeier got the starting job, though he definitely earned it by all accounts. But Sears was held out. The last week there was kind of hobbled throughout the whole practice because of an injury that he sustained in the spring, and I believe if Sears had been 100%, we would have seen him situationally in the game, not coming in to replace Bachmeier per se, but coming in situationally, third and short, maybe when the drives were kind of stalling out, bring him in for a couple of snaps to get the running game involved, because he does have some legs that he can use as well. So I think we would have seen that if he was 100%. So he definitely looked like he was limited as well. So right off the bat, those 3 players were. Boise State was already dealing with issues before they came to this game. But like I said, I don't think it mattered. The real 2 main things that lost Boise State this game, besides UCF UCF allowing them to stay in the game as long as they did, that's already been said. But the 2 main things, having said UCF's allowing them to stay in the game, the 2 main things that lost Boise State this game were the play calling on offense and an inability to stop the run on defense. So let's talk about the play calling here. Boise State had 4 straight drives in the second half. 4 straight drives where they ran the same play or a variation of the same play on first down 4 straight times. The run game wasn't going anywhere. Boise State only had 20 yards rushing in this game, which is the lowest that they've had potentially in their entire FBS history. I stopped looking after 2000, but I believe it's the lowest they've ever had. It is at least the lowest since 2000. The previous low was 27 yards rushing against Arkansas in 2002, though they also had a 28 yards rushing against TCU in 2008. So definitely the lowest since 2000 at least, but I believe it's the lowest in their FBS history, period. But Boise State was not getting anywhere with the running game. Not at all. I mean, Boise State had a couple of plays. Van Buren broke out for a 22-yard run and was able to punch it in for a touchdown. And then Cyrus had like one good play of like 8 yards to start the game. But those plays were held by the passing game. Boise on those drives besides Cyrus on that first, I think it was his first play and he got 8 yards. But the drive that Van Buren was able to get that 22 yards rushing was because Boise State had been passing it all over the place, and then they snuck in a run, and it turned out great. So if Boise State was using the pass to set up the run, and if Boise State had used that throughout the game, Boise State would have, I'm not saying that they would have had a great rushing game, because I definitely think that there's a big drop-off between Helani and Cyrus and Van Buren, but the UCF wouldn't have been ready for it every single time like they were in the second half, and Boise State ran the same play 4 times in a row. It was completely mind-boggling. I talked about in my reaction video that Boise State looked like a team that was trying to find their identity. Boise State for a long time has been a balanced attack team, a team that comes out with a great running game and a passing game, and they complement each other. Well, Tim Plow is an air raid style guy, and I think that's what he wants to install in this team, but it looked like either he was holding himself back or he was being held back, because it didn't look like he was running the offense that he wants to run, because Boise State was continuing to try and force the run game when it didn't make any sense. And that is what lost Boise State the game in the second half. I mean, Boise State was up 21-0 at one point in the second quarter. 21-0, and they lost by 5. Boise State had a massive lead, and they threw it all away because of the play calling, starting on that final drive in the first half and continuing into the second half. Now, yes, UCF was able to get back in it with a field goal, with a touchdown to cut the lead to 24-7, and then they got a touchdown right afterwards at the start of the second half to Georgia 14-24. So they got right back into the game quickly, with some good game management, some good time management there. But got 21-24 there in the second half because they scored earlier. But it was some good time management. They were able to get themselves back into the game. But Boise State could have got a lead back on. They could have pushed this game in the second half if they continued to run the same offense they'd run in the first half. If they'd continued to throw the ball all over the field. I mean, that is one of the positives out of this game, is that Boise State proved they have a very deep receiving core. Boise State had 10 different receivers catch passes. Shakir topping that list with 91 yards, but Stephon Cobb's also great, coming in second. Evans finally reasserting himself after so many injury-plagued years. And then Bowens also looked good. Riley Smith was involved in the passing game. Boise State had 10 different receivers catch passes, and pretty much any time Boise State went to the air, they had it. Boise State receivers were open almost every single time that they threw, Bachmeier released the pass. The only reason that they missed any passes was either because he threw it poorly. There were several passes, even in the first half there, that he wasn't on the same page with his receivers. He kind of threw it to a different part of the field that they were running to, or where he completely overthrew them. And then there was a bad drop by Thomas that we'll talk about here in a second. So there were a couple of bad drops as well. But overall, Boise State's receivers showed good hands, and they were open every time. If Boise State had stayed in the air, they would have won this game. Given that UCF was not operating at 100% and that their defense did not look 100% sharp, if Boise State had stayed in the air, if even on one of those 4 drives they had chosen to throw the ball instead of run it up the middle, because they would run it up the middle on first down, they'd attempt something on second down, which was sometimes another run, which wasn't working, but they'd attempt something on second down, and then third down, if it was more than 4 or 5 yards, they just ran the ball again. They didn't try to pass it. They didn't try to go for it long. I mean, just uncork it. See how far you can throw it. If it gets picked, it's like a punt. See what you can do versus running a draw play or just running a straight-up run inside zone, running it up the middle, which you know is not going to get you anything. You're not going to catch UCF napping on 3rd and 8 when you've run it every single down. Just completely mind-boggling. It did not make any sense. If we were talking about, it's like FIU or Charlotte, or some little small UTEP, we were talking about some small program that doesn't have a high caliber coaching staff. You could say, okay, it's a small school, trying they're adapting. But this is Boise State. This is Boise State with a great coach in Andy Avalos, or who has shown in the past, at least the defensive side, that he's a great coach. Tim Plow, who's coached great. I mean, this is. If you're coaching at Boise State, you're not a nobody. You're not someone who's getting tried out for the first time and have no skills. If you're coaching at Boise State, one of the top programs in Group of 5, you're a good coach, or you should be. And to come out here and call a game the way that the Boise State coaches did in the second half, it's completely perplexing. I'm running out of words for mind-boggling, perplexing synonyms. It looked like they were setting something up. It looked like they were trying to, run in the middle, a couple of drives, and then boom, we catch them napping with a quick pass up, on a go or something, and that didn't happen. They weren't setting something up. That was their game plan, was to try and establish the run in the second half when it hadn't been working in the passing game. And great. Why go away from the passing game when it's been working out fantastically? And Boise State wasn't stopped once in the passing game all the way down the field. In fact, they were only stopped on the field goal drive because they chose to run the ball instead of passing it. I'm sorry. I'm done analyzing that. The point's been made that the play calling was terrible. especially in the second half there, and the run game was completely non-existent. 20 yards rushing is an embarrassment. UCF's a good team, but they're not Georgia. They're not Alabama. They're not some big, massive Power 5 with players that are twice the size of the Boise State players, all an entire line made up of entire defense made up of 5-star recruits. This is UCF who is recruiting on a similar level to Boise State, and I would say that Boise State probably has a recruiting edge in a couple of different categories over the past few years. So this is a team that Boise State's playing its mirror here. They're playing another top group of 5 program, and to come out and only have 20 yards rushing and your offensive line to look like butter with letting players. I mean, the pass protection was okay. Bachmeier didn't get sacked. And he looked like he had an okay amount of time. He wasn't hit as many times as he was over the last few years that he's been quarterback for Boise State. But there was no push up front on the running side. And you look at the great Boise State teams of the past. I said it. It was one of my keys to the game. We'll talk about it when we get there. But Boise State has built themselves. The great Boise State teams built themselves on their offensive line. And if Boise State's offensive line can't push forward and get yards in the run game, that this is not a great Boise State team. This is a team that is developing. This is a team that is going through a rebuild year. And I think Boise State fans that we're in for a bit of a rough ride. I said in my preview of the season, not my 3 keys to the game video, but my preview of the season, I predicted Boise State would go 10-2 if they could beat UCF. I said if they lost to UCF, then this could be a rough year. If they lost to UCF, there's several other teams of UCF's caliber or better that I didn't know if Boise State's going to get by. And buckle up, Boise State fans, because this could be an 8-4 season that we're heading into. Now, I hope that this was just a first game. The coaching staff trying to work things out. Maybe Tim Plow fell asleep, or something. Maybe there's an excuse, maybe he was called away on important business and it was just kind of, all right, guys, just go autopilot, see what you can do. I'm being facetious. But hopefully this was a team, offensively, defensively, trying to find themselves, and a coaching staff that was trying to find themselves. And hopefully UTEP will be a chance for them to come out, win big against a team that's not very good, a chance for them to kind of gel together and establish their identity and move forward the rest of the season and get some big wins there down the road and pull off a good year. I mean, this is a year, we're out of the New Year's Six hunt. That's given. There's no New Year's Six coming. We lost to UCF. A lot of incredible things would have to happen for Boise State to still be in the hunt for the New Year's Six. But with a loss to UCF, every AAC team would have to lose like twice for Boise State to have a chance. Because if UCF doesn't get it, then whoever beats UCF will get it. And even if Boise State and that team are 1-1, one loss each, that team's still going to have the win over UCF, which Boise State didn't. So we're out of the New Year's Six hunt, but we can still go get a Mountain West Conference championship. We can still end the season with the 10-2 record is still there. 11-1 is technically still there, though Oklahoma State's going to be a tough one. But a good season is still there, and this is a rebuild year, no question about it. But it doesn't have to be a bad year. It can be a rebuild year where Boise State goes out and wins a ton of games, goes in ranked to a bowl game where they beat some middle of the road Pac-12 team and come in strong for next season, setting themselves up to come in the rankings high and go out and achieve big things. The season's not over yet. We're one game into the season. A lot of times Boise State loses a game and it feels like the whole season's over. It's not over yet. I'm saying that we've potentially got a tough road, but I'm preparing us for the worst so we can be prepared for it, but I'm expecting the best. Boise State is always a team that's been able to recover and go out and prove themselves even after tough losses. Boise State lost to Ole Miss in 2014, and they also took a loss to Air Force, and then they went undefeated the rest of the season and went and played in the Fiesta Bowl. So Boise State is a team that's able to come back from things. This is a team that won a lot of games in 2019. It's pretty much the same roster from that 2019 team. and it's a team with a coaching staff that I still have a lot of faith in. I haven't lost faith in the team. I think that they're going to take a hard look at themselves. Avalos is the kind of guy that's going to have this team prepared moving forward. They're going to take a hard look in the mirror. They're going to find out, they do a lot of heart searching, maybe have some discussions with whoever was calling the plays, whether that was Tim Plow or a combination of Avalos and Tim Plow. They're going to get together and they're going to find out exactly what happened in the second half happened and not let it happen again. So I think that we're going to see a Boise State team that looks very different next week against a weak opponent in UTEP, and potentially looks very different against a good team in Oklahoma State. And that's my hope moving forward. But Boise State has to find that identity. They have to find out, are they a team that's a balanced attack still? Can they do that with the weapons that they have? Or are they a pass-heavy team that goes out and throws the ball 40 times a game and comes out with a win that, avoids turnovers and comes out with a win? With the offensive line that we have and with a questionable Holani, I think we need to be a pass-heavy team. I think that Boise State doesn't have the big guys up front that are going to be able to block for a lot of... some of these Mountain West teams look scary. Fresno State looked very good, especially defensively. Their offense lost the game for them with the turnovers early up front. But Fresno State looks incredible. They look better than UCF. They look better than any team I've seen that Boise State's going to be playing as far as defensively goes. So, and if Boise State couldn't run the game against a good UCF team, they're definitely not going to be able to run the ball. I think I said run the game, but they're definitely not going to be able to run the ball against a great Fresno State defense. So Boise State should just go away from that. They should adapt on the fly, move forward and adapt. The past is a past. We can be excited about what the past was and use that to motivate ourselves, but the future is where Boise State's heading. And this coaching staff cannot be stuck in the past. If they want to get Boise State back to the level that they were in the past, they have to do things differently going forward in the future. I'm not saying Boise State has to always be a pass-heavy attack team, but until they start installing some different schemes on that offensive line front, until they start getting in some new players, there's not a ton of time. There's not a ton of time for the quarterback, and there's not a ton of protection, but there's not a ton of push for the running game. So Boise State needs to get a lot of receivers out there, give a lot of options for the quarterback to throw the ball all over the field, and get Hank Bachmeier into looking into other targets. He was kind of zoning in on one guy, which worked out for the most part, at least in the first half. But he needs to figure out how to throw the ball a little bit better, go through a couple of reads in a limited amount of time, figure out how to throw the ball better on the run. He didn't look great throwing the ball outside the pocket this time. So fix some things with Hank and move forward into an offensive scheme that fits to not necessarily Hank Bachmeier's strength. I think Hank Bachmeier is a player that plays best with a balanced attack, but plays to your team's overall strength because you have a great receiving core, a running game that's struggling, and an offensive line that looks terrible in the run game. So move forward with a scheme that works for them and don't be stuck in the past. So that's my kind of overall analysis here of the offense. It looked like an offense trying to find themselves, a quarterback that lacked awareness. I'm not going to talk about that last. Okay, I'll talk about a little bit of it here. Hank Bachmeier showed an incredible lack of awareness in that second to last drive. Running down outside, it's 3rd and 2, I believe, or maybe it was 3rd and 4. 3rd and 4, he's running outside, he's been flushed. You look at the replay, he is across the line of scrimmage. I don't know why a flag wasn't thrown before it. It doesn't matter because the next play that he did was he ran across the line of scrimmage, and instead of putting his nose down to get that first down, if he'd just fallen forward, he'd had the first down. Instead of getting the first down to keep the drive alive, he threw across his body to a double-covered receiver, and he underthrew the pass. Even if he'd thrown it great, it probably wouldn't have got to him because there was not a lot of space between the defender and the receiver. He threw across his body like it was a Hail Mary throw that got intercepted. So that's why it doesn't matter that he was across the line of scrimmage because that interception would have counted either way. But he instead of this is a junior quarterback, and instead of taking the first down, taking what he could get, plenty of time on the clock. Boise State had 2 timeouts, I believe, at that point. So 2 timeouts, plenty of time on the clock to keep the drive alive and go down and get that score to beat UCF and leave them with 0 time on the clock. That is what Boise State was looking at. It looked like another miracle game for Boise, and as soon as he started running outside, and his eyes were still downfield, and the defenders were coming at him, I knew he was going to throw it. And I was just going, don't throw, don't throw, don't throw. And he crossed the line of scrimmage, and I said, don't throw, and he threw the ball. And as soon as he threw the ball, I knew it was an interception. As soon as he threw the ball, I just went like this, because I knew it was a pick, and it got picked. This is a quarterback. Now, he's a junior by year. He's a true junior. But really, we're looking at a quarterback who didn't play his whole freshman year. I believe he only played the 7 games before the injury. I think he played 1 game after the injury, and then he played for the bowl game. So he played like 8 or 9 games his freshman year. And then his sophomore year was COVID season, which was already reduced schedule, and then he ended up missing a game, the BYU game there. So this is a quarterback, when you look at the total games played, I'm looking at, I think he's played like 14 games. If he played 8 games his freshman year, and Boise State played 7 games, 6. He's played like 14, 15 games. This is a quarterback who's a junior, but playing experience-wise, he's an early sophomore as far as playing, or a sophomore as far as playing experience goes. And I think that's showing in his lack of awareness, in his lack of ability to read defenses and to shift through multiple different receivers before releasing the ball. He's a quarterback. He's got Hank Bachmeier magic. We've seen it before. But it's a quarterback that kind of leans into that magic versus leaning into the mentality of the game. The not just the skills, the raw skills and talent that you have, but into the smarts of the game, into the part of football that makes great quarterbacks great. I mean, Kellen Moore did not have the measurables, but he was a smart quarterback who was able to play at another level in his head before he even released the ball. And Bachmeier plays like a fresh, raw recruit that hasn't been coached up properly. And he really, really needs to be developed into the talent that he can be. I think if we don't end up getting Bachmeier back on track, at least this season, hopefully he sticks around for next year, if we don't get Bachmeier on track, it'll be an incredible failure by Boise State to waste a player of his talent level, a player who has shown so much promise, because we couldn't get him the coaching that he needed to get to the level of play that he's capable of. So I think that it really fixing this offense, really it comes down to getting with Hank Bachmeier, because offensive line, that's not going to be fixed in a game. It's not going to be fixed. It might not even be fixed in a season. We have seen Boise State offensive lines turn it around. 2014, the offensive line was terrible first half the season. Second half of the season looked pretty good. So we have seen offensive lines turn it around, and maybe it's shifting some players here and there, but it's going to take a few games. It might take the whole year. That's not an easy fix. The running back situation, getting Helani healthy, not an easy fix. That's a time thing. And I still don't know if Cyrus or Van Buren are up to his level. We never got to see it because they were getting hit in the backfield every single play. I'm not even sure that Helani being in there would have made that big a difference. But the running game is not an easy fix. But 2 easy fixes are getting the play calling, fixing the play calling, just calling it completely differently. That's an easy fix. Just, it doesn't sound easy, but, I'm not saying you have to go out there and draw up whole new plays. Just do what you were doing in the first half, do it in the second half. Find consistency in the play calling. That's a pretty easy fix. Hank Bachmeier is not necessarily an easy fix, but he's a one-man fix, and he's a quarterback that is smart enough with enough attention and enough focus, I think, can be put on the right track to being the quarterback he's capable of. Not necessarily an easy fix, but easier than the other issues. If they can fix the offensive play calling, and if they can fix at least the awareness of Hank Bachmeier, getting him better situationally, that is going to pay huge dividends forward. And Boise State's going to be a team that's going to be able to go out there and compete against these Oklahoma States and Nevadas and Fresno States and San Diego States and all the other teams that they have on their schedule if they can get those 2 big issues fixed. So defense, I'm already talking for 30 minutes. I promised it wasn't going to be a long video. I'm shown to be a liar when that comes to it. I've never done a short video. But we're going to try and blow through the defense here, kind of like UCF did. We're going to try and go through the defense here pretty quickly and just kind of hit some of the big pointers, and then we'll move on and hit my 3 keys of the game will be real quick. So hopefully I can keep this under 45 minutes. All right, so secondary, defense overall. First thing I want to say is there was a lot of talk coming in this game that UCF was just going to be too fast for Boise State. That Boise State probably didn't have the defenders to keep up with UCF speedy receivers on the outside. And I want to say that it didn't look like that. Boise State's defense was definitely bad in this game, but it wasn't because UCF was too fast for them. The secondary overall, I thought, did a pretty good job. Yes, they gave up 318 yards passing, but if you take away two long passes that were that for combined together were 78 yards, I believe one was like 34 and another one was like 42 or something like that. Or 44 or something. Two long passes that together made up 78 yards. That themselves, it was actually pretty good coverage. The receiver just made a great catch. If you take away those two plays together that equaled 78 yards, UCF only had 240 yards passing, which is not a bad performance by this defense. It's a pretty average performance, but it's not bad. So if you take away that 78, it's out of 318. 240 is not that bad a game. And like I said, there's kind of lucky catches in pretty good coverage for that defense. Tariq LaBeouf looked amazing. He had 2 interceptions and a touchdown. All of last year, Boise State only had 3 interceptions, and LaBeouf actually had 1 of those picks. So in the last 2 years, Boise State has 5 interceptions, and LaBeouf has 3 of those. So this is a player that's really exploded into his role here. Next man up mentality, of course, replacing Walker and Avery, which is a big task for anyone. But he really looks like that Avery level player. He's a little bit more. He has a little bit more measurables. Not as speedy and shifty as Avery was, but he looked pretty good on that 100-yard interception return. So he is a great player that I think is going to be really kind of one of the anchors of this defensive unit. I expect to see a lot more interceptions from him going forward, especially against some of these quarterbacks that Boise State will face that aren't as good as Gabriel. So the secondary overall didn't look that bad, but there were a couple of things secondary did that really hurt Boise State that needs to be improved going forward. The first thing is they didn't, besides LaBeouf, they wouldn't get their heads turned around. The ball would be up in the air, everyone would be yelling past, they knew it'd be coming, and they'd be staring down their defender, even though they're right on him good coverage-wise, and the ball, and sometimes that would work out. Sometimes it would work out that, just staring them down and being right on them, it would be too much for the receiver to catch. But most of the time, because they didn't have their heads turned around, they either missed an interception or the receiver was able to, kind of do a stop and catch or, jump or whatever. They would get some of those jump balls because the defender never had their head turned around and didn't know when the ball was getting there. So Boise State's defenders need to have their head on a swivel and figure out a way to keep that tight coverage that they have and combine it with some better ball awareness. I think if Boise State had that going forward, they need to improve that going forward, but if Boise State had that for their game, they might have had a couple more interceptions, but they definitely would have prevented some of those long touchdown drives that UCF had, which just happened so quickly. They were long yardage-wise, but they happened so quickly because, Gabriel's would get off a big throw, which would inspire the team momentum. The stadium would pick up. The team would feed off of that crowd noise, and they'd go down and score. The drives that UCF had, they were very, very quick drives with big plays that it just looked like Boise State could do nothing against them. And I think having a head on swivel would have helped with that. UCF was 10 of 17 on third downs, but I'm not going to blame that on the secondary because the secondary coverage was pretty good. But you can only cover a guy for so long before somebody gets open. And that brings us to the real fault of this defense, the real weak spot, which is weird considering that Avalos, he's a linebacker. He is a guy that was, that down in the dirt, blue collar type of guy. It's weird this would be the weakest unit, but it is. The line and the linebackers were terrible in this game. And Riley Wimpy had like 11 tackles, but no tackles for loss. So he was making tackles, and Boise State's number 1 linebacker, he was making tackles, but after the running back had already gone for 5 or more yards. I mean, your number 1 tackler on the team was J.L. Skinner, the safety, who I thought played great. He stopped Gabriel's from getting a 2-point conversion, delivered a big hit on him, but he had 13 tackles. You don't want your safety having that many tackles, because if he has that many tackles, it means one of two things. Either players are catching the ball deep down the field, which really wasn't happening, or it means that your opposing team's running backs are getting past the first and second line and into the secondary, and the safety's going to having to come down and make some big stops. And he had some big stops. He played really well, but it shouldn't have come down to him. He shouldn't have had to have 13 tackles. The reason he had 13 tackles is because the line couldn't stop anybody. Gabriel's had 64 yards for 5.3 yards per carry. Bowser looked unstoppable. He had 5.3 yards per carry. If UCF had just handed the ball off to Bowser or done quarterback sneak every play, I am convinced that they would have scored every single drive. if they had not put the ball in the air a single time and just done those two plays, I'm convinced they would have scored every drive, because every single time that either of those two players touched the ball, they had 5+ yards, 20+ yards, touchdown. Every single time that either of those players touched the ball, they were gone. The defense could do nothing to stop them. Even when the line was able to get a little bit of pressure, Gabriel's was able to just do a little bit of shifty footwork and get out of there. Boise State had only 3 sacks in the game, and 2 of those came from the standout line defender Isaiah Banya, who had 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss. I'm critiquing the line and the linebackers here, but I'm not critiquing Banya. He had an outstanding game. He should have been in the game more, or being used more, and I think we should use him going forward. I got a chance to actually talked through with a lot of people out there that thought that Banya was playing a great job out, because he had 2 sacks and 2 tackles. If I'm babbling a little bit, I've been talking for a long time, but he had 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss. He played outstanding. I really loved seeing his play out there. He came out with a lot of speed and a lot of effort. I love that go-get attitude, and I wish that we'd been able to see more of him throughout the game, and I think we will going forward the rest of the season. So, but besides that, Boise State was not able to get their hands on the quarterback. They were not able to touch Gabriel. Even when it looked like they were going to be able to get him, he was able to run outside, and once he started stretching the play, once he started running outside and extending the time that the defenders were having to cover, someone was open and he was able to get that pass off. It was just heartbreaking, the amount of third downs that UCF was able to convert, because the secondary was on their guys forever, and eventually someone got open. So Boise State has a lot of issues on this team, but the number one issue on this entire team is definitely the defense. And I was really hoping that the defense looked terrible last season. They really did. And it was definitely the weakest part of the team. And I was really hoping that Avalos, being a defensive-minded guy, would be able to come in here and work a little bit of magic, even though he's playing with the same playmakers, work a little bit of magic and be able to turn this defense around. And I didn't see that, and I don't think we're going to see that necessarily this season. I think it is going to take a couple of years for Avalos to bring in his kind of guys, bring in some recruits that are going to be able to play at the level necessary. Boise State has some great defenders out there, LaBeouf, Banya, some other guys. Wimpy has some talent that, Wimpy, great linebacker who I think could be achieving at a higher level. Boise State has guys, Boise State has guys out there, but overall, this entire unit does not look like a top defense, group of 5-wise, and it definitely doesn't look like the type of defense that Boise State expects, because Boise State has always hung their hat. I talked about how they hung their hat on the offensive line. Well, they've also hung their hat on the defense. Boise State has always had great defenders. I mean, you talk about how many defenders have gone to the NFL or are in the NFL right now, looking at Van Der Esch, Lawrence, Crawford, who retired. But Boise State has always had great defenders throughout, front to back, from the line through the secondary, and that even though they've had great players, their strength has been on the team cohesion and unity overall. And that is what Boise State has built themselves on. And that this defense doesn't look like they are achieving that yet. They look like they have the talent spread out, even though they might not have it throughout. They have the talented players that they can build around, but they don't have the cohesion and the unity necessary to go out there and achieve at the high level that Boise State has expected in the past. So this is going to be a long fix. It's going to take at least half a season to get what Boise State needs out of this defense, I think, to be achieving at the level that they are potentially capable of. But I think that Boise State's going to lose a lot of games here because of the defense and the fact that they weren't able to stop the run at all in this game against a team that's really kind of hung their hat on the passing game. And this is a team that's not been they're an okay running team, but they're a great passing team. The fact that this team that's not one of those number one rushing teams in the nation was able to go out and do this against Boise State tells me that it's only going to get rougher from here. So, looking forward on this, I would love to see Avalos turn this team around, in a couple of weeks. And UTEP's going to be a much better performance, but I would love to see Avalos turn this team around in a couple of weeks. And I hope he proves me wrong. But I don't think it's on him. I think it's on the tools that he has. And I think it's going to take a couple of years for him to get the tools in his tool shed, to get a couple of recruiting classes under his belt before he's able to actually go out and achieve at the level that he, as a great defensive-minded coach, is capable of. I realized I didn't grade the offense. I gave him a C minus is what the offense got overall. So defense on this one is going to get a D because they really were the reason that Boise State lost this game, 36-31. The play calling in the second half didn't help. It definitely doomed Boise State. But the reason that Boise State was even in trouble in the first place after going up 21-0 was because the defense couldn't stop anybody. And like I said, if UCF hadn't shot themselves in the foot so many times, the defense would have got scored on a lot more, at least 3 more times than they ended up getting scored on. So the reason Boise State lost this game, it's a team effort. You can never blame it on one unit, but the unit that takes the most responsibility, the most culpable of all the players on the field was definitely the defensive unit here. All right, special teams. I'm going to say it up front. I'm not going to wait till the end to grade this one because otherwise I'll forget. B+. And I'm not saying B+ because it was a B effort. This was an A+ effort from the special teams, but they had a couple of mistakes there that brought their grade down. Damas, 1 of 1 on his field goal attempts at 31 yards. I was talking to his parents before the game, and they were talking about how Damas, he himself was saying that he's never played in an environment like this before. You think about it. This is a former walk-on who just came off of 2 years on mission, who's played in quiet stadiums because of COVID, So this was a big environment for him. And a 31-yard field goal, which he has the leg and the accuracy, that became a much bigger field goal with the crowd environment. And he nailed it right down the middle. He made all of his extra points. This is a special, special player. This is one of my favorite players in Boise State, on the Boise State team. He's a sophomore right now. He has 5 years of eligibility overall. And so he's still got 4 more years of eligibility, including this season. This is a guy that I think is going to be the best kicker in Boise State history. It's a goal that he has to be that kicker, and I think he's going to get it. This is a guy that he does not only does he have the leg strength, 2 field goals from plus 51 yards, or maybe it's 3. No, I think it's 2. But perfect from 51 yards out, and a kicker who is I had it written down here. Oh, well, sorry, I lost that stat. But he's great from 50, trust me on that one. And a kicker who has incredible accuracy. If Boise State can't get into the end zone, he's going to be able to get them those points to keep them in the game. Great kicker for Boise State. So he played great. Vasquez, now this is a player who has struggled in the past. He really has. But he really improved going forward at the end of last season. And I said in my review of the season last year, my kind of overall review, that I thought that Vasquez was going to have his best year and was going to be able to start supplanting himself in the Boise State history books as one of those, career performances by a Boise State kicker in a season. And he absolutely proved me right. He averaged 50.7 yards per kick. 50.7 yards per kick. That is incredible. He had a 61-yarder and a 51-yarder, and one of those 2 kicks came while Boise State was taking incredible pressure in their end zone area, I think on their side of the 20. UCF brought the house. It looked like he was going to get blocked. I mean, there were like 5 or 6 UCF players, and he somehow stood in there, got the kick away and flipped field position. Every one of his kicks were past the 50. Boise State did not lose this game because of Vasquez, and they didn't lose it because of their special teams performance overall. But Boise State was able to keep UCF far enough away to prolong this game and keep Boise State in it. So Boise State owes part of the fact that they were even in this game to begin with to Vasquez and his ability to flip the field. I think he's going to be a huge strength of this team going forward throughout the rest of this season, and I think that he is going to be a reason that Boise State wins some of these games. Maybe the games that they shouldn't win, he's going to be a reason that they do because of his incredible kicking. I'm so glad because he's always had the leg, he's always had the talent, but he has lacked consistency. He's had issue with shanking kicks. Last year he kicked a ball off of one of the up men. I think it was in the Utah State game. So this is a player who's always had the talent, but he's lacked the consistency, and he's finally put the 2 together, and I think he's going to be great this year. All right, so why are we giving this team a B+ versus an A+? Well, for one, not Vasquez's fault at all. It was definitely on a snapper. Ball went way up over his head. There was no way he was going to be able to catch that pass. Snap the ball over his head, roll it back into a safety. Anytime that your special teams gives away points, you got to deduct some overall grade points there. In the end, it didn't matter. They were already punting the ball away anyway, and that 2-point difference didn't make any difference in the game because even if UCF, even if you take 2 points away, it's still 34 here to 31. And so Boise State would have had Boise State would have had to go down and kick a field goal. So I guess actually that, there is a chance that would have made a difference there. The 34-31 there, because 34-31 they would have been 3 points away, so they could have kicked a field goal. So that would have ended up making a difference there. So I'm going to backtrack on my previous statement there, because Boise State was in field goal range and they could have kicked a field goal. But I'm actually, I'm going to reverse course again. It didn't end up mattering because Hank Bachmeier threw an interception anyway. So they never got to fourth down where they were going, it wouldn't have mattered if they were in field goal range or not, which they were, and if they only needed a field goal, which they would have, because Hank Bachmeier would, I am convinced, would still have done that exact same play because he didn't need to do that play, and he did it anyway. So lack of awareness on his part would have doomed it whether there was a 3 points needed or not. So in the end, didn't end up making a huge impact on the game, but that's bad to have, to have a snap infraction like that or have a bad snap. So Boise State definitely needs to clean that up going forward, but overall, punting game was outstanding. Two other things it's going to take away from the A-plus potential here. Long kick return here with 18 yards. Boise State really looked like they were missing Avery there. Didn't seem to have the same return capability at all. In fact, didn't return any punts at all the entire game. Part of that was good punting by UCF and good coverage team action, but part of that was also just not having the confidence that Avery did that he was going to be able to turn a situation that looked like he was going to get anything into a touchdown. So that reduces it to a B+, but of the three units, C- for offense, D for defense, and B+ for special teams. Of the three units, the special teams performed the best, and I'm very excited to see what Donovan Vasquez, that kicking duo, do going forward. All right, so real quick here, because I'm already at 50 minutes, one of my longest review videos. But real quick here, offensive line staying strong was my first key, C+. Pass protection was okay, 0 sacks, but still not enough time for Bachmeier overall. That needs to be better, and they could not run the ball. Capitalize on red zone, A+, 100%. They 100% action in the red zone, and they were 3 out of 4 of those were touchdowns. So they kicked a field goal, but 3 out of 4 of their red zone attempts were touchdowns. Outstanding job in the red zone. Second string need to step up. This is kind of an in between mixed results here, because I was getting a C+ overall because the run game, neither Cyrus nor Van Buren stepped up. But who's to blame in that? It's hard to blame them when the offensive line was so terrible. Halani could have been out there, and Boise State could still have only rushed for 20 yards. I do believe that Halani has a little bit more shiftiness and breakaway speed. He might have been able to use that to his advantage, especially on some of those pitch outs that Boise State had. So, it might have been a little bit different, but Cyrus and Van Buren weren't able to step up into replacing Halani there, or at least weren't able to have good performances in this game. So they're not going to be able to get credit for that second string step up mentality. Defense, again, kind of a meh overall on that one. It didn't matter who was out there, first or second string, both were struggling. I do like the next man up mentality, but as far as Tyreek LaBeouf having a great game, he wasn't the second string in this game. He was the first string, so you can't count his action. Banyan did great. And he definitely had a great, he was a second string coming into this game, and he played outstanding. So his performance was great. But overall, it didn't matter who was out there or how many plays were being made. They were running the ball all over Boise State all night. So defense doesn't really get it. The unit that did step up was the passing game. A+ for them as far as second string step up. Cobbs looked outstanding. He kind of had a mediocre performance last season, but showed some true talent and spark. And he had 4 receptions for 63 yards. It was a great threat out there. I think he was second on the team in receptions. Bowens looked great. He had 3 receptions for 31 yards. And then 87 K Rafdell. He had 2 receptions for 13 yards, but they were difficult catches, and I'm excited to see what he can do going forward. Of course, Riley Smith played great, but he's not a backup. So second string step up, C+ overall. So that's my ratings there. Offensive line stand up, C+. Capitalized red zone, A+. Second string step up, C+. All right. Next game, so right here at the end of the video, next game, we're going against UTEP. UTEP's 2-0 against bad teams. They played New Mexico State and then an FCS opponent. I don't remember who it was. But they're 2-0. That game's going to be 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time, FS1. Boise State is going up against a quarterback in this matchup who's played well. He has over 432 yards throwing so far. Quarterback Hardson. I did watch that New Mexico State game to kind of see what Boise State was going to be up against. He's not incredibly accurate, and he tends to underthrow sometimes, but he does throw the ball incredibly far. He's got a good arm under him. He got lucky in a lot of those throws because the UTEP receivers had so much space in between them and New Mexico State. A couple of speedy guys, but it's kind of hard to tell if he's speedy or he's speedy in comparison to New Mexico State. But he got lucky in a couple of those because even though he was able to throw it far, his accuracy issues caused him to have some underthrows. So I think it's going to be a potential for some interceptions here if Boise State's receivers can get that head on the swivel. I'm going to talk about my 3 keys to the game where I'll kind of preview this matchup and talk about what Boise State needs to do to win it. So I'm not going to go into any more depth here. But just overall preview, kind of reviewing what we talked about here today. The offense needs to get better as far as the play calling. That's the simplest fix. Boise State does that. They are going to be a team that's going to be competitive. The defense needs to find a way to meld together better. And Boise State needs to they don't have players that are winning the battles up front, so they need to adjust the scheme here. I think Boise State needs to send some blitzers and hope for the best, because the blitzing will help with the run game and or reducing the run game. It will also reduce the time that the quarterback has to throw the ball out there. The secondary is playing really well, but they aren't going to be able to recover someone forever. So Boise State needs to send a blitz on pretty much every single play to help against that run game and reduce the time the quarterback has in the pocket, because I think that is going to be the only way that you see this defense actually being able to make improvements going forward, because they just don't have the players overall that are going to be able to win those one-on-one battles up front, in the middle of the field, even though they might have the players that are going to win it one-on-one in the back, in the secondary. Just overall, someone's going to be able to get open if there's enough time for the quarterback. So blitzing is definitely going to help moving forward. So they need to start focusing more on the blitz. Special teams, I thought that they were doing exactly what they needed to, but they need to improve on the kick return. That's the punt return, kick return units need to start actually blocking some of those players up front that are coming at the punt returner, so he can have some space to get some balls out. I think that we'll see that against UTEP. It'll be exciting to see if Cobbs Cobbs is the punt returner. See if he can develop some chemistry and a little bit of momentum going into the Oklahoma State game. And then just my 3 keys to the game. We already talked about those. So Boise State, not a big matchup against UTEP, but it's a good scheduling. It's a good game as far as scheduling goes, because it'll give Boise State to kind of refresh, come in strong against UTEP, get a chance to prove that they're a team that can go out there and score points, and which they did, but a team that can perform consistently overall, work out some of those knots and kinks that they had from the UTEP game, and then come in strong for the big one. Oklahoma State coming on the blue. It's going to be a hard one. It's going to be a really, really tough matchup. So Boise State definitely needs to build some big momentum this UTEP game. I'm hoping for a big win, and we'll talk about my 3 keys to the game video here on Wednesday. So thank you for watching my video. A very long video, but there was a lot to break down after that loss. And none of my review videos will be this long, but there was a lot to talk about with the issues that Boise State had. So hopefully anything that going forward, it'll just be rehashing those issues. Or maybe they'll get fixed. I won't even have to talk about them again. Either way, videos won't be as long going forward. Thank you for those of you who stuck around to the end. Thank you for that. And as always, go Big Blue.